and the Central Bank of Canada and all the other central banks around the world see the fact that you're saving money is a problem. And they want you to spend your money, and they're trying to force you to spend your money any way they can by continuously devaluing the dollar and driving up prices to the point where if you're saving 5%, they want to increase your cost of living by 5%. Exactly, to enslave yourself. You're right there, Dockside. Right? So that you'll spend the money you're saving, if it's not because you want to, if it's not because times are good and you're blowing your money on MasterCard again, because you have to, because they're going to starve you out and make you spend that money. We'll know that hyperinflation is hitting us when we see the cost of goods and services that we use every day go up 3, 4, 5, 6 months in a row, and we see the delta getting bigger. If we have a 5% gain and then it's a 7% gain and a 9% gain, but here's the thing, don't bet on inflation, right? Don't bet against it either. Solidify your life, folks. If there's nothing else you learn from me tonight, learn that we can't bet just for inflation or hyperinflation or deflation. I'm going to tell you something that you've probably never heard anywhere else before unless you've heard it from me. 99% of Americans have bet everything they have on inflation, as inflation being a good thing. If you think about it, they buy into a stock that they have no idea through a mutual fund, and they just throw money in it all the time. Why? Because their financial advisor said, inflation is going to be a constant, you need to beat inflation, and the stocks will go up because they're going to use inflation to make more money. Think about this, folks. If I run Jack's widgets, and widgets are something everybody needs and uses, and inflation kicks up by 10% in a quarter, and my prices go up by 10%, you actually buy it, in the short term, my company looks great. My profits just went up by 10%, and I didn't even do anything. It is just a dollar dropping there, silver bugs, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more than it's not just the dollar dropping, because, again, the dollar can drop, but if nobody spends any dollars, then it hasn't really dropped in reality in the marketplace. And here's another thing that we need to understand. I bet most people here are interested or know enough about this to know what I mean when I say M3 money, the M3 money supply. Everybody that knows what M3 is, give me a Y. Just give me a Y in the chat room. Look at all the Ys, right? We know what M3 is. Total amount of money in circulation is M3. M3 is M2, which is what they still tell us, and then M3 adds in the big stuff, right? Things like what do they call them? Like credit default swap agreements, derivatives, huge money market accounts in the hands of multi-billion-dollar corporations. All of that money. Well, the M3 went up, devaluing the dollar. Do you know what just happened to the M3 over the last 2 years? It went down. How many people knew the M3 in the last 2 years? There's actually less money. Right? A lot of people did know, I bet. Where did the money go? Can anybody in the chat room tell me where the money went? Where'd the money go? They didn't save it. If they saved it, it would still be in the money supply. It's not involved, it would still be in the money supply. It evaporated into nothing. It didn't go back to the banks. It's gone. It's gone. Let me explain to you how it went away. When you borrow money from a bank to buy a house, they don't loan you money they already have. They don't have the money at all. When they loan you money, it went into thin air. You're absolutely right there in the chat room. When they loan you money, new money is actually created. That's the fractional reserve lending system. So you come to me, I'm the banker, I write you a mortgage for $150,000. I've created new money out of thin air. And the money is actually supported by the underlying property. Okay? That's what's allowed me to create the money. You've offered up consideration in the form of property and reserve. When that property defaults and you're no longer paying me my principal and interest every month, and you say, screw it, and you throw the keys at me and you walk from the property, and now the property's only worth $75,000, where'd the other $75,000 that was created go? It went away. It's gone. So what's holding inflation in check right now, in spite of the $3 trillion that they pumped in, is the $3 trillion that evaporated and went away into thin air. And now they have to keep pumping it back in. And they're trying to re-inflate the balloon. Right now, understand this. Everybody and their mother in the government and in the financial sector isn't doing what we're doing. They're not worried about inflation. They're praying for inflation. So understand that the reason we have to worry about hyperinflation is not trying to make it happen, only under a slow, controlled mechanism, 2% a year. They want to force you to enslave yourself by forcing you to incur debt, risk your money, because they want to control the market. That's the Keynesian philosophy, right? If you look at the Austrian philosophy, it's to allow the market to control itself. There is no Austrian economics at play in any modern economy right now, other than what has to be there. So understand this. This is why you haven't seen inflation yet, because the money, even though it looks like they pumped all this new money in, all they did was fill the hole that was created when $3 trillion worth of wealth vanished overnight, and most Americans lost everything that they had. Let's go ahead, take the next question. Looks to me like we're looking at Lucky 43113. Again, if you don't have a mic, just repaste your question into the chat.
Yeah, Jack, I want to thank you for taking my question there. I just wanted to say I'm almost 28 years old. I'm on disability, so money's pretty tight, and still live at home and whatnot. And my parents think I'm crazy talking about this hyperinflation and silver and gold and all this. So I do buy some silver, mainly silver, but I have a little bit of gold. But what else can I do to try to prepare for when my parents and, family just really don't want me to prepare? I mean, what can I do?
Well, first, let me just say, I feel for you, man. I wish that your situation was better, and do the best you can with what you have. But here's the thing. First of all, when somebody tells me their family doesn't want them to prepare, and if you're married and it's your wife, it's different. A marriage is a partnership. You got to work and do the best you can. But anybody else, with the very nicest way you can tell them to go screw, and you prepare because it's about you. And if you end up in a hard way, they're not going to come bail you out because they're going to have their own problems if we deal with this. But when you have limited finances, right, don't think that the only solution is buying stuff, right? It's about solidifying your life. There is always going to be some expense to it, but how we spend our money is what's important, and where we put our money. You need to look at building whatever you can to provide for yourself in a sustainable manner. This is why I'm so big on things like gardening and permaculture. And you might tell me, well, I can't own land. I can't buy a house. And if that's the case, and if I'm going to ask you, do you have a piece of property to work with, or are you a renter? Go ahead and give me an answer to that, and I'll keep going.
No, my parents, they own the house and everything, but we're in a real small town, and, we got not a lot of property. My grandfather, on the other hand, he's got about 3.5 acres, so I've got a little room. I always put out, a big garden out there and things of that sort. But one trick that I've kind of been a way to trick my parents, and it's starting to work, though, and anybody else if they're in my situation might want to think of this. I've been preparing a little bit, just tell them preparing for a bad winter, so we won't have to go out and run to the grocery store and worry about there not being anything there and things of that sort, in case of a panic because of a bad snowstorm or something. So I'm kind of using that as a false front.
That's a great tactic. And I mean, with the gardening and the land improvements and stuff, you have a limited amount of work that you can do. You have a disability you're dealing with, but you can probably, since, if you're doing stuff like that, you're not on a production schedule, so you can take your time and do a little bit here, a little bit there. Use ulterior motives to get people into preparedness. Things like if we put in a really beautiful orchard, it improves the property value, because it's not a lie and it's not really a deception. But we also get the productivity out of it. So what you're doing, I would keep doing. Just remember that even if you have limited resources, it still comes down to 5 things: food, shelter, water, energy, and security. Everything that we need in life revolves around those 5 things. We have to eat damn near every day. When the elements are harsh, we've got to have shelter. We need energy in the form of fire, heat, cooling, electricity. We need energy, and we need security. And security is the one that we really need to pay attention to. We can survive our entire lives without security, but we can only survive for it about a fraction of a second at a time when necessary. So make sure that we focus on those 5 things. I know I'm not maybe being as specific as you would like me to be, but it's very difficult to do in an environment like this. But focus on the things that you need. And, you know, maybe I was oversimplifying. Definitely some people in the chat room were oversimplifying why I asked. Okay, you're living together. I didn't really get that at first. So you have a unique challenge there. But sell them on the advantages. If you've listened to my show at all, what I say is that the way we prepare is designed to improve our lives if times get tough or even if they don't. So if we're improving the properties and making it productive, we're also increasing the underlying value of the land. If we're making sure we have food in reserve and nothing really bad happens, but we get a bad snowstorm for 2 weeks, we don't suffer. Use those soft sells to get them as involved and on board as possible. Let's go ahead and take the next question. Looks to me like it's Jonathan 13. Either go ahead on the air or leave me your question again in the chat room.